Underground alien bases. The Dulce underground base expose. Phil Schneider. We've all heard rumors of secret government underground facilities such as Area 51 or Cheyenne Mountain, but how many of these facilities could there be? And what is taking place at these bases that is so secretive? Approximately 83 miles, or 134 kilometers, northwest of downtown Las Vegas, Nevada, exists a top-secret U.S. military installation dubbed by pop culture as Area 51, but insiders refer to it as Dreamland, the Nevada Test and Training Range, Watertown, Home Base, Home Airport, or specific sites such as S2, S3 and the infamous S4. The number 51 is only significant to land surveying, since the site exists in the dry bed of Groom Lake on Grid Square number 51 near the intersecting borders of 3 counties in southern Nevada: Clark County, Lincoln County, and Nye County. The nuclear testing site located just to the north is, for example, called Area 13, also named for the stretch of land it occupies. Within Grid Square 51 is a 6 by 10 mile block of land, at the center of which is a large air base the government will not discuss. This air base has the longest air traffic runway on planet Earth, but that's just what is on the surface. When it was constructed in 1955, this base was originally named Paradise Ranch, to make it more appealing to construction workers and attract personnel. Located on a remote portion of land along the southern shore of Groom Lake, this detachment of Edwards Air Force Base was originally utilized for the testing of the U-2 spy plane. The special use airspace around the field is referred to as Restricted Area 4808 North, R4808N. Known as the Groom Box, this restricted airspace measures 23 by 25 miles. The Janet fleet of the U.S. Air Force flies employees into the base on a daily basis from McCarran International Airport and Nellis Air Force Base. Groom Lake Road descends eastward to the floor of the Tikaboo Valley, passing the dirt road entrances to several small ranches, before converging with State Route 375, the extraterrestrial highway, south of Rachel. At the entrance to Groom Lake sits a warning sign stating that photography is prohibited and that use of deadly force is authorized, under the terms of the 1950 McCarran Internal Security Act. The area surrounding the lake is permanently off-limits both to civilian and normal military air traffic. Security clearances are checked regularly, cameras and weaponry are not allowed. Even military pilots training in the area risk disciplinary action if they stray into the exclusionary box surrounding Groom's Dreamland airspace. Surveillance is supplemented using buried motion sensors and the perimeter is patrolled by private military contractors. Projects developed at Dreamland include the development of the F-117 Steel fighter aircraft. Some of well-known operations: Project Looking Glass, Project Sidekick, and Project Aquarius. The U.S. government finally admitted to the existence of the Groom Lake complex in 2013, although the CIA claims it was just a test facility for aerial and surveillance technology. This disclosure comes as much of the facility has been decommissioned and sensitive operations transported to other deep underground military bases around the country that are less well known, which is our primary focus. With more than 130 DUMs nationwide, examples of other facilities include Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, Camp David in Maryland, Los Alamos Laboratories in Dulce, New Mexico, National Security Agency, NSA, headquarters at Fort Meade and the Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA, Command Center at Mount Weather in Northern Virginia. But there are more than 1,477 DUMs worldwide that we know of, and since the military was constructing more than 2 DUMs per year in the 1990s, and since this statistic is nearly 2 decades old, there could be more than 1,500 DUMs on Earth as of 2014. So when we consider the bottomless abyss of the black budget, When we consider the phenomenon of sinkholes becoming more prevalent the world over, when we take into consideration that every underground base requires nearly $20 billion of funding to construct, and when we consider that while none of these monetary figures exist on any accounting books, trillions of dollars go missing on a yearly basis from the Pentagon and the Defense Department. We need only consider what is beneath our feet, to understand that greed is not the end game for the elite. The amount of information the United States government has been willing to provide regarding Groom Lake and other dams has generally been minimal due to the highly questionable happenings of these subterranean operations, and insiders who go public with their information risk their lives in doing so. Former employees who have gone public include but are not limited to Bob Lazar, Dan Berg, David Adair, Derek Hennessy, Bill Uhouse, Milton William Cooper, and Phil Schneider, who all confirmed the existence of the Groom Lake facility, and have provided the public with detailed information regarding the contents and happenings within the S4 complex and other deep underground military installations. For exposing this enigma, whistleblowers have sacrificed their comfort, their social status, their economic welfare, and in most cases they have paid for their revelations with the ultimate price. These whistleblowers all possess two very important things. They realize that keeping this a secret undermines everything our republic is supposed to stand for, and they have the intestinal fortitude to shed light on this subject. How are these bases built? This is a $13 million tunnel boring machine, TBM, used for tunneling at the Nevada test site and other dams. Many other types of TBMs are used by many government agencies, including the nuclear-powered TBM, NTBM, that melts solid rock and leaves behind glass-like walls. They are capable of tunneling up to 2 miles per day. Most tunneling activity is under military installations and all information is highly restricted. Former employees of said facilities have surfaced over the years to talk of massive underground installations in places like the Northrop facility in Antelope Valley, California, rumored to have 42 levels, and the Lockheed installation near Edwards, California. The black budget currently consumes $1.25 trillion per year, and since each dam costs anywhere from $18 billion to $26 billion just to construct, these underground facilities are a major factor. Presently, there are 131 deep underground military bases in the United States that we know of. They have been building these bases day and night since the early 1940s. These bases are basically large cities underground connected by high-speed magneto-leviton trains that have speeds up to Mach 2. Who blew the whistle on this? Phil Schneider was a self-taught geologist and explosives expert. Of the 129 deep underground facilities Schneider learned the U.S. government had constructed since World War II, he professed to have worked on 13. 2 of these bases were major, including the bioengineering facility at Dulce, New Mexico, where Schneider maintained that gray humanoid extraterrestrials worked side by side with American technicians. In 1979, Schneider's team drilled holes on top of an underground alien city during excavation of an underground base in Dulce. A battle ensued during which 66 Secret Service, FBI and Black Berets were killed along with an unspecified number of alien greys, during which Phil received a beam weapon blast to the chest which opened him like a fish, caused his later cancer and burned several of the fingers off of his left hand, as well as toes from one foot. He frequently showed the battle scar on his chest at lectures as proof. As outlined by the whistleblower organization Project Camelot, Schneider's accusations that are worthy of attention include: 1. The American government concluded a treaty with gray aliens in 1954. This mutual cooperation pact is called the Greta Treaty. 2. The space shuttle has been producing special alloys in orbit. A vacuum is needed for the creation of these special metals, thereby justifying the mandate for a large, permanently manned space station. 3. Much of our stealth aircraft technology was developed by back engineering crashed alien craft. 4. AIDS was a population control virus invented by the National Ordnance Laboratory, Chicago, Illinois. 5. Unbeknownst to just about everyone, the US government has an earthquake device. Neither the 1995 Kobe earthquake nor the 1989 San Francisco quake had a pulse wave. 6. The World Trade Center bomb blast and the Oklahoma City blast were achieved using small nuclear devices. The melting and pitting of the concrete and the extrusion of metal supporting rods indicated this. Schneider's forte, he claimed, was explosives. Phil Schneider was liquidated just prior to releasing a tell-all book. He had a Rhyolite clearance, the highest level, to come out and tell it like it is. In May 1995, Phil gave a lecture on what he had discovered. 7 months later he was tortured and killed by those for whom he had previously worked. This man's final acts should not go unnoticed. Finally, Phil Schneider's lamented that the democracy he loved no longer existed. We had become instead a technocracy ruled by a shadow governments intent on imposing their own view of things on all of us, whether we like it or not. He believed 11 of his best friends had been murdered in the last 22 years, 8 of whose deaths had been officially explained as suicides. Whatever one might think of Phil Schneider's claims, it is clear that he was of particular interest to the FBI and CIA. His widow has stated that intelligence agents thoroughly searched the premises shortly after his death and made off with at least a third of the family photographs. Schneider maintained that numerous previous attempts had been made on his life, including the removal of the nuts from one of the front wheels of his automobile. He had stated publicly he was a marked man and did not expect to live long. "If I ever commit suicide," Schneider told a close friend, "I will have been murdered." Phil Schneider 1995 lecture. It is because of the horrendous structure of the federal government that I feel directly emperilled not to tell anybody about this material. How long I will be able to do this is anybody's guess. However, I would like to mention that this talk is going to be broken up into 4 main topics. Each of these topics will have some bearing on what you people are involved in, whether you are patriots or not. I want you to know that these United States are a beautiful place. I have gone to more than 70 countries, and I cannot remember any country that has the beauty, as well as the magnificence of its people, like these United States. To give you an overview of basically what I am, I started off and went through engineering school. Half of my school was in that field and I built up a reputation for being a geological engineer, as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. I have helped build 2 main bases in the United States that have some significance as far as what is called the New World Order. The first base is the one at Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a firefight with alien humanoids, and I was one of the survivors. I am probably the only talking survivor you will ever hear. 2 other survivors are under close guard. I am the only one left that knows the detailed files of the entire operation. 66 Secret Service agents, FBI, Black Berets and the like, died in that firefight. I was there. Number 1, part of what I am going to tell you is going to be very shocking. Part of what I am going to tell you is probably going to be very unbelievable, though, instead of putting your glasses on, I am going to ask you to put your skepticals on. But please, feel free to do your own homework. I know the Freedom of Information Act isn't much to go on, but it's the best we've got. The local law library is a good place to look for congressional records. So, if one continues to do their homework, then one can be standing vigilant in regard to their country. Deep underground military bases and the black budget. I love the country I am living in more than I love my life, but I would not be standing before you now, risking my life, if I did not believe it was so. The first part of this talk is going to concern deep underground military bases and the black budget. The black budget is a secretive budget that garners 25% of the gross national product of the United States. The black budget currently consumes $1.25 trillion per year. At least this amount is used in black programs, like those concerned with deep underground military bases. Presently, there are 129 deep underground military bases in the United States. They have been building these 129 bases day and night, unceasingly, since the early 1940s. Some of them were built even earlier than that. These bases are basically large cities underground connected by high-speed magneto-leviton trains that have speeds up to Mach 2. Several books have been written about this activity. Al Bielek has my only copy of one of them. Richard Sauder, a PhD architect, has risked his life by talking about this. He worked with a number of government agencies on deep underground military bases. In around where you live, in Idaho, there are 11 of them. The average depth of these bases is over a mile, and they again are basically whole cities underground. They all are between 2.66 and 4.25 cubic miles in size. They have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles long in one day. The black projects sidestep the authority of Congress, which as we know is illegal. Right now, the New World Order is depending on these bases. If I had known at the time I was working on them that the NWO was involved, I would not have done it. I was lied to rather extensively. Development of military technology, implied German interest in hyperspatial technology. Basically, as far as technology is concerned, for every calendar year that transpires, military technology increases about 44.5 years. This is why it is easy to understand that back in 1943 they were able to create, through the use of vacuum tube technology, a ship that could literally disappear from one place and appear in another place. My father, Otto Oskar Schneider, fought on both sides of the war. He was originally a U-boat captain, and was captured and repatriated in the United States. He was involved with different kinds of concerns, such as the A-bomb, the H-bomb and the Philadelphia experiment. He invented a high-speed camera that took pictures of the first atomic tests at Bikini Island on July 12, 1946. I have original photographs of that test, and the photos also show UFO fleeing the bomb site at a high rate of speed. Bikini Island at the time was infested with them, especially under the water, and the natives had problems with their animals being mutilated. At that time, General MacArthur felt that the next war would be with aliens from other worlds. Anyway, my father laid the groundwork with theoreticians about the Philadelphia experiment, as well as other experiments. What does that have to do with me? Nothing, other than the fact that he was my father. I do not agree with what he did on the other side, but I think he had a lot of guts in coming here. He was hated in Germany. There was a $1 million reward, payable in gold, to anyone who killed him. Obviously, they didn't succeed. Anyway, back to our topic: deep underground bases. The firefighter Dulce base. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided to circumvent the Constitution of the United States and form a treaty with alien entities. It was called the 1954 Greta Treaty, which basically made the agreement that the aliens involved could take a few cows and test their implanting techniques on a few human beings, but that they had to give details about the people involved. Slowly, the aliens altered the bargain until they decided they wouldn't abide by it at all. Back in 1979, this was the reality, and the firefight at Dulce occurred quite by accident. I was involved in building an addition to the deep underground military base at Dulce, which is probably the deepest base. It goes down 7 levels and over 2.5 miles deep. At that particular time, we had drilled 4 distinct holes in the desert, and we were going to link them together and blow out large sections at a time. My job was to go down the holes and check the rock samples, and recommend the explosive to deal with the particular rock. As I was headed down there, we found ourselves amidst a large cavern that was full of outer space aliens. otherwise known as large greys. I shot 2 of them. At that time, there were 30 people down there. About 40 more came down after this started, and all of them got killed. We had surprised a whole underground base of existing aliens. Later, we found out that they had been living on our planet for a long time, perhaps a million years. This could explain a lot of what is behind the theory of ancient astronauts. Anyway, I got shot in the chest with one of their weapons, which was a box on their body, that burned the fingers right off of me and blew a hole in me and gave me a nasty dose of cobalt radiation. I have had cancer because of that. I did not get really interested in UFO technology until I started work at Area 51, north of Las Vegas. After about 2 years recuperating after the 1979 incident, I went back to work for Morrison & Knudsen, EG&G and other companies. At Area 51, they were testing all kinds of peculiar spacecraft. How many people here are familiar with Bob Lazar's story? He was a physicist working at Area 51 trying to decipher the propulsion factor in some of these craft. Schneider worries about government factions, railroad cars, and shackle contracts. Now, I am very worried about the activity of the federal government. They have lied to the public, stonewalled senators, and have refused to tell the truth in regard to alien matters. I can go on and on. I can tell you that I am rather disgruntled. Recently, I knew someone who lived near where I live in Portland, Oregon. He worked at Gunderson Steel Fabrication, where they make railroad cars. Now, I knew this fellow for the better part of 30 years, and he was kind of a quiet type. He came in to see me one day, excited, and he told me they rebuilding prisoner cars. He was nervous. Gunderson, he said, had a contract with the federal government to build 107,200 full-length railroad cars, each with 143 pairs of shackles. There are 11 subcontractors in this giant project. Supposedly, Gunderson got over $2 billion for the contract. Bethlehem Steel and other steel outfits are involved. He showed me one of the cars in the rail yards in North Portland. He was right. If you multiply 107,200 times 143 times 11, you come up with about 15 million. This is probably the number of people who disagree with the federal government. No more can you vote any of these people out of office. Our present structure of government is technocracy, not democracy, and it is a form of feudalism. It has nothing to do with the Republic of the United States. These people are godless, and have legislated out prayer in public schools. You can get fined up to $100,000 and 2 years in prison for praying in school. I believe we can do better. I also believe that the federal government is running the gambit of enslaving the people of the United States. I am not a very good speaker, but I will keep shooting my mouth off until somebody puts a bullet in me, because it is worth it to talk to a group like this about these atrocities. America Black Program Contractors. There are other problems. I have some interesting 1993 figures. There are 29 prototype stealth aircraft presently. The budget from the U.S. Congress 5-year plan for these is $245.6 million. You couldn't buy the spare parts for these black programs for that amount. So, we've been lied to. The black budget is roughly $1.3 trillion every 2 years. A trillion is 1,000 billion. $1 trillion weighs 11 tons. The U.S. Congress never sees the books involved with this clandestine pot of gold. Contractors of sleuth programs, EG&G, Westinghouse, McDonnell Douglas, Morrison Knudsen, Wackenhut Security Systems, Boeing Aerospace, Lorimar Aerospace, Aerospatial in France, Mitsubishi Industries, Ryder Trucks, Bechtel, IG Farben, plus a host of hundreds more. Is this what we are supposed to be living up to as freedom-loving people? I do not believe so. Star Wars and apparent alien threat. Still, 68% of the military budget is directly or indirectly affected by the black budget. Star Wars relies heavily upon stealth weaponry. By the way, none of the stealth program would have been available if we had not taken apart crashed alien discs. None of it. Some of you might ask what the space shuttle is shuttling. Large ingots of special metals that are milled in space and cannot be produced on the surface of the Earth. They need the near vacuum of outer space to produce them. We are not even being told anything close to the truth. I believe our government officials have sold us down the drain lock, stock and barrel. Up until several weeks ago, I was employed by the US government with a Elite 38 clearance factor, one of the highest in the world. I believe the Star Wars program is there solely to act as a buffer to prevent alien attack. It has nothing to do with the Cold War, which was only a toy to garner money from all the people. For what? The whole lie was planned and executed for the last 75 years. Stealth aircraft technology used by US agencies and the United Nations. Here another piece of information for you folks. The Drug Enforcement Administration and the ATF rely on stealth tactical weaponry for as much as 40% of their operations budget. This in 1993, and the figures have gone up considerably since. The United Nations used American stealth aircraft for over 28% of its collective worldwide operations from 1990 to 1992, according to the Center for Strategic Studies and UN Report 3092. The Guardians of Stealth and Delta Force. Origins of the Bosnia conflict. The Guardians of Stealth. There are at least 3 distinct classifications of police that guard our most well-kept secrets. Number 1. The Military Joint Tactical Force, MJTF, sometimes called the Delta Force or Black Berets, is a multinational tactical force primarily used to guard the various stealth aircraft worldwide. By the way, there were 172 stealth aircraft built. 10 crashed, so there were at last count about 162. Bill Clinton signed them away about 6 weeks ago to the United Nations. There have been indications that the Delta Force was sent over to Bosnia during the last days of the Bush administration as a covert sniper force, and that they started taking pot shots at each side of the controversy, in order to actually start the Bosnia conflict that would be used by succeeding administrations for political purposes. Thoughts on the bombings in the United States? I was hired not too long ago to do a report on the World Trade Center bombing. I was hired because I know about the 90-some-odd varieties of chemical explosives. I looked at the pictures taken right after the blast. The concrete was puddled and melted. The steel was literally extruded up to 6 feet longer than its original length. There is only one weapon that can do that, a small nuclear weapon. That is a construction-type nuclear device. Obviously, when they say that it was a nitrate explosive that did the damage, they're lying 100%, folks. The people they have in custody probably didn't do the crime. As a matter of fact, I have reason to believe that the same group held in custody did do other crimes, such as killing a Jewish rabbi in New York. However, I want to further mention that with the last explosion in Oklahoma City, they are saying that it was a nitrate or fertilizer bomb that did it. First, they came out and said it was a 1,000-pound fertilizer bomb. Then, it was 1,500. Then 2,000 pounds. Now it's 20,000. You cannot put 20,000 pounds of fertilizer in a Ryder truck. Now, I've never mixed explosives, per se. I know the chemical structure and the application of construction explosives. My reputation was based on it. I helped hollow out more than 13 deep underground military bases in the United States. I worked on the Malta project, in West Germany, in Spain and in Italy. I can tell you from experience that a nitrate explosion would have hardly shattered the windows of the federal building in Oklahoma City. It would have killed a few people and knocked part of the facing off the building, but it would have never have done that kind of damage. I believe I have been lied to, and I am not taking it any longer, so I am telling you that you've been lied to. The truth behind the Republican contract with America. I do not perceive at this time that we have too much more than 6 months of life left in this country, at the present rate. We are the laughingstock of the world, because we are being hoodwinked by so many evil people that are running this country. I think we can do better. I think the people over 45 are seriously worried about their future. I am going to run some scary scenarios by you. The contract with America. It contains the same terminology that Adolf Hitler used to subvert Germany in 1931. I believe we can do better. The contract with America is a last-ditch effort by our federal government to tear away the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Some statistics on the black helicopter presence. The black helicopters. There are over 64,000 black helicopters in the United States. For every hour that goes by, there is one being built. Is this the proper use of our money? What does the federal government need 64,000 tactical helicopters for, if they are not trying to enslave us? I doubt if the entire military needs 64,000 worldwide. I doubt if all the world needs that many. There are 157 F-117A stealth aircraft loaded with lidar and computer-enhanced imaging radar. They can see you walking from room to room when they fly over your house. They see objects in the house from the air with a variation limit of 1 inch to 30,000 miles. That is how accurate that is. Now, I worked in the federal government for a long time, and I know exactly how they handle their business. Government earthquake device, AIDS as a bioweapon based on alien excretions. The federal government has now invented an earthquake device. I am a geologist, and I know what I am talking about. With the Kobe earthquake in Japan, there was no pulse wave as in a normal earthquake. None. In 1989, there was an earthquake in San Francisco. There was no pulse wave with that one either. It is a Tesla device that is being used for evil purposes. The black budget programs have subverted science as we know it. Look at AIDS, invented by the National Ordnance Laboratory in Chicago, Illinois in 1972. It was a biological weapon to be used against the people of the United States. The reason I know this is that I have seen the documentation by the Office of Strategic Services, which by the way is still in operation to this day, through the CDC in Atlanta. They used the glandular excretions of animals, humans and alien humanoids to create the virus. These alien humanoids the government is hobnobbing with other worst news. There is absolutely no defense against their germs, none. They are a biological weapon of terrible consequence. Every alien on the planet needs to be isolated. Saddam Hussein killed 3.5 million Kurdish people with a similar biological weapon. Do we, the people of this planet, deserve this? No, we do not, but we are not doing anything about it. Every moment we waste, we are doing other people on the planet a disservice. Right now, I am dying of cancer that I contracted because of my work for the federal government. I might live 6 months. I might not. I will tell you one thing. If I keep speaking out like I am, maybe God will give me the life to talk my head off. I will break every law that it takes to talk my head off. 11 of my best friends in the last 22 years have been murdered. 8 of the murders were called suicides. Before I went to talk in Las Vegas, I drove a friend down to Joshua Tree, near 29 Palms. I drove into the mountains in order to get to Needles, California, and I was followed by 2 government T-350 vans with G14 plates, each with a couple of occupants, one of which had an Uzi. I knew exactly who they were. I have spoken 19 times and have probably reached 45,000 people. Well, I got ahead of them and came to a stop in the middle of the road. They both went on either side of me and down a ravine. Is this what it's going to take? I cut up my security card and sent it back to the government, and told them if I was threatened, and I have been, that I was going to upload 140,000 pages of documentation to the internet about government structure and the whole plan. I have already begun that task. Thank you very much.